What's up and welcome. This is me, you, and Switch 2. I am me, Tom Tates, and you are you. So let's talk about Switch 2. This is the latest and greatest Nintendo Switch 2 news brought to you every Tuesday and Friday in snackable 10-minute episodes. We're going to try to keep this one to 10 minutes, but this is a long one. It is Friday, December 5th, 7:53 a.m. on the East Coast. This is episode 54. So last episode, I ran through all of the games hitting Switch 2 in December, and we are really kicking things off with a ridiculous week of hot new releases. Like, these are top tier games, and there are plenty of reviews to check out. So we're going to cover Metroid Prime 4 Beyond and Octopath Traveler 0 today, and I'm hoping to cover a little bit of Marvel Cosmic Invasion, and that's just scratching the surface. So let's start with Nintendo's latest first-party release, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. So overall, this game is reviewing very positively, as expected. Nintendo wouldn't release a true 1,000% flop. There will be flaws in a first-party Nintendo game, but I don't ever see them releasing a game that just completely bombs. Correct me if I'm wrong. Fans have been waiting for this particular game 18 years. They've been waiting 18 years for this game to come into existence. So anything with that long of a wait is going to be met with some divisiveness, a little bit of a critical eye. So I know it's not apples to apples. I was thinking about this last night as I was kind of jotting down notes for today's show. I remember when Star Wars Episode 1 came out in theaters. So that's going to date me a bit. But this actually blew my mind. The wait between Metroid Prime 3 and 4 is longer than the wait between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace. So the anticipation for this stuff builds up like crazy. And depending upon your age and your history with the franchise, it's going to color your opinion. So when I was a kid in 1999, pod racing was awesome. And it didn't even occur to me that Jar Jar Binks might have been a bit too much, right? A bit heavy-handed in episode 1, right? So it's all going to depend upon your history with Metroid and your context and what you like and don't like. So all that to say, reviewers have some glowing things to say about this game, but also a lot of little nitpicks. So your specific mileage may vary if you pick up Metroid Prime. Nintendo Life's Ollie Reynolds gave it a 9 out of 10. He completed the game in about 16 hours. He praised the visuals, the soundtrack, the sense of exploration, and the open world areas. Now, one of the most divisive things in the previews for this game was an NPC with annoying dialogue, frustrating dialogue, but Ollie found the Galactic Federation characters endearing and said that they boosted the narrative. Nintendo Insider's Alex Seedhouse gave it an 8 out of 10, and he said the game's climactic conclusion is worth the price of admission alone. He beat the game in 13 hours. Polygon's Giovanni Colantonio was more mixed, headlining his review with Samus Aran's long-awaited adventure is a hodgepodge of revelatory and aggravating ideas. He said it feels like it's a bit of a Frankenstein project. IGN's Logan Plant applauded the visuals in his 8 out of 10 review. He said in some areas, Prime 4 makes a case for itself as the best-looking game Nintendo has ever published. Best-looking game Nintendo has ever published. In some areas, it's pretty bold. Game Informer's Kyle Hilliard gave it an 8.75 out of 10. And while Nintendo Insider called out how great the conclusion was, Kyle called it underwhelming and said that the story lead up was not compelling. So again, it's really going to depend on your perspective. One of the most interesting quotes, though, came from VGC's Andy Robinson. He called it Ocarina of Prime, which I really loved, Ocarina of Prime, saying that Beyond isn't much of a traditional Metroidvania anymore either, but more like a pre-Breath of the Wild 3D Zelda game. Soul Valley, the desert environment shown in trailers, is basically Hyrule Field, with each main area positioned like a self-contained dungeon on each corner. And reading that quote, I knew exactly what he was talking about, and it probably echoes back to the development roots of this game taking place before Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were even a thing. And they very much changed the game for these open world exploration type games. So overall, there's a lot of universal praise for the graphics, the soundtrack, the boss battles, the core Metroid vibe and gameplay. But the general cons seem to be, this underdeveloped open world element to the game, a lot of hand-holding, apparently, too much emphasis on the NPC characters, if that's your thing or not. And there's some green crystal collection tasks that a few reviewers wrote about that feels like bloat, feels like a bit of a chore towards the end of the game. That's about it. So honestly, this still feels like a must play, in my opinion, especially if you've been playing through the series. I don't know how you don't play this game. It's high on my list. I have not played a Metroid Prime game, and I'm sad to say that because Metroid is one of my favorite franchises. I've played through all of the 2D Metroid games extensively. Super Metroid is one of my favorite games of all time. I just didn't pick this one up, and I don't know if it was because I moved on from GameCube at a time when this came out, but I have so many opportunities to play this, and I haven't played it. So I'm going to pick this. I'm going to pick up this franchise. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick up this franchise from the beginning, and eventually I will get to Metroid Prime 4 or beyond. But for now, let's move beyond Metroid. See what I did there? And we'll talk about Octopath Traveler 0, which also was released yesterday. So the fact that these two games released on the same day, pretty epic. And just for context, Octopath Traveler 0 released for $50 and Metroid Prime Beyond is $70. So for $20 less, you're getting an RPG experience that is close to 100 hours worth of gameplay. It's like 80 to 100 hours if you want to play through it all the way. So keep that in mind if money is tight and you're trying to really stretch how much value and how much time spent you get out of your game purchases. Okay, without further ado, let's talk about this game. It is the prequel to the HD 2D turn-based games Octopath Traveler and Octopath Traveler 2, which have now released on multi-platforms, but they did have their origins on Switch, the original Switch. Octopath Traveler, the first one, was one of my favorite games on Switch. In 2022, Octopath was released as a free-to-play mobile game called Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent. So Square Enix put out this game. I'm not a big mobile gamer, and I don't love gacha mechanics, so I passed on this one. I passed right by it. Apparently, 0 is based on this game. It's an adaptation of the mobile game, but it rips out a lot of the mobile free-to-play mechanics, so it feels like a contained console game. So the first two games, Octopath 1 and 2, they have 8 distinct characters with their own 4-part storyline. So you can build your party and you can tackle them in any way that you want. I really appreciated that freedom. It was linear, but there was so many paths you can take that it wasn't linear, right? So it's all turn-based combat, much traditional RPG, all the stuff that you would expect. There's a cool break and boost mechanic. I believe that's from Bravely Default, that series, where you can charge up attacks strategically. A lot of fun. After reading a bunch of reviews, I learned that this one flips it a bit. So instead of 8 unique storylines, there's more of a single narrative based around a hero that you create. So you have a avatar that you create that pursues a set of villains, and while you're doing that, you're recruiting characters to join your party. You can have an 8-person party, so you can have 8 people in your battles, and there are 30 characters that you can recruit. So that's all new. All that mechanic is new. There's also a town building component to it, which is also new to the series. So after reading reviews, what's the general consensus? Overall, the reviews I read were super positive, saying that it's a worthy Octopath Traveler game, but it doesn't quite feel like a true successor like in Octopath Traveler 3. It doesn't really feel like that true sequel. It feels different. The 8-character combat system is mostly seen as a meaningful change, letting you strategize a bit deeper. The storytelling is a bit more streamlined than the previous games because you're just following one hero with a pretty direct path. Some reviewers were critical of this single plot line, almost as if it loses a bit of the Octopath identity, which I understand. I mean, the 8 heroes, that whole 8 heroes having their own narrative arc, that is like the Octopath DNA. And a lot of reviewers said having 30 playable characters makes them feel a bit disposable, so you can't really go too deep when you have 30 characters. I've got links in the show notes to all of the reviews. Neil Ronigan from Nintendo World Report gave it a 9 out of 10. Nintendo Life's Mitch Vogel also gave it a 9 out of 10. His joys: 8-character party leads to more interesting combat. Town building adds a fun and interesting spice to the gameplay. Loads of content to experience. Villain-focused narrative is different and compelling. Looks beautiful and feels very nice at 60 frames per second. Cons: graphics and music are a bit of a retread, and individual character building feels more simplistic. Polygon's Paulo Kawanishi was a bit more critical. I like this line that he wrote in his review. Octopath Traveler 0 loses the sparkle that made the series special by adopting a single protagonist, a decision that might have worked for Champions of the Continent, but turned Octopath Traveler 0 into an ordinary RPG by comparison. Pretty bold. Game Informer's George Yang gave it an 8 out of 10. IGN's Michael Higham was 70 plus hours in and didn't set a score because he didn't finish the final narrative arc, but generally positive stuff in that review. Again, I'm going to link to all of this. So we are over 10 minutes now. I like to try to keep these podcast episodes as close to 10 minutes as possible. The clock is ticking. I wanted to cover Marvel Cosmic Invasion. I have all my notes. I'm going to save that for the next episode, and I will also cover Assassin's Creed Shadows and Red Dead Redemption, both of which were recently released on Switch 2. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. That's it for today. I'm curious what you're picking up. There's so much to choose, and I know we're close to the holidays, so maybe, money is tight as you're buying gifts and all that stuff, or maybe you're picking up games for friends or family members. You can let me know over on Blue Sky at Switch2Pod. I'm at switch2pod.com for all the things. As always, thank you so much for your time and your attention. A kind rating or review on your podcast listening app of choice helps me continue to grow the show. It really does help. Sharing with a friend, family member, Discord server, subreddit, or wherever gamers hang out goes even further. Much love. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the weekend. It's Friday, folks. Enjoy. Monday comes fast. Much love. Now go play some games.